growth, the cloud is kind of invaluable for startups like ours. There's a quick summary. So this is who we are. Really, the innovation is around working in the social space such that people can actually monetize much better. People can identify their population much better, and really target specific goods and services that are much more oriented towards segmented sections of their audience. Thank you, and I'm just going to leave you with this slide here in terms of some of the recent announcements. Thank you so much.
My name is Boyle. It's a pleasure to be here this evening to speak to you. This is the first time I've been in front of this audience, so it's a very exciting time. Thank you for the invitation. Does everyone know what WAN optimization is? It's in the enterprise space. It enables companies that are growing and that have a global distribution to effectively move their data throughout the enterprise and make it feel like a LAN. So we do lots of tricks by putting both physical and virtual boxes throughout a corporate network and mitigate all of the issues that you might see when you globalize and become a WAN. So the effects of latency, the effects of loss on a network when it's not great, and also the chatter and the restricted bandwidth that you'll see when you enter a WAN as well. That's what this market is built around. Okay. Four things that we'll look at. I'd like to tell you about Silver Peak. We'll look at the keys to our success, the technology differentiators that make us successful, and put it in context of the enterprise and what the cloud means to the enterprise. Okay. So, what about Silver Peak? We've been about for several years now. We've been acknowledged as the fastest growing WAN optimization company. We're exclusively focused on WAN optimization. A lot of our competitors have several other offerings, such as offering storage or security or networking. We're a very focused company. We have seen 70% sales growth over the last year. We've been profitable and cash flow positive in the last fiscal year. We have growing sales and marketing. We've went global in the last year also. Invested hugely in going into South America, EMEA, and APAC. We expect to see a lot of return on that within the next 6 to 12 months. And as well as winning the TIE Award, we've been acknowledged in the Wall Street Journal as one of the top 50 private companies for the past 2 years, and been cited as the next big thing. And our investors are there for you to see. We have hundreds, and I was going to say thousands. We have several hundred customers. These are just a sample of the biggest ones. Obviously, having Google and Apple on your books, as well as VMware, EMC, storage giants like NetApp as well, is it's a great position to be in from where we are. The keys to our success: a really sound management team and excellent engineering is been my observations since I've been there. There's a lot of quality without overextending in quantity. We've also had key partnerships. We play a lot in the storage space between our data center, and we've tied ourselves in with the giants like EMC and Hitachi. So there's a lot of business coming from that, and obviously having large customers like VMware, plus having a virtual solution, really as a startup, we needed to own a niche. We saw that our competitors were focusing heavily on the optimization of lots of branch offices into a data center. And we saw that there was an open niche at the very high end for data centers talking to other data centers where there's a lot of bandwidth. And I think we're acknowledged in the market today as really owning the data center to data center stuff. And obviously we need to have a differentiated product. So how are we differentiated? Well, we look from a network perspective. Again, in the market, a lot of our competitors are looking at application acceleration, and they pick out things like Exchange and email and Windows file sharing, and they try and really accelerate these individual applications, writing proxies for each. We looked at the network as a whole and saw that that wasn't really a scalable model for us. So we looked at the layer 3 of the network. We saw that there's much more than the TCP IP traffic running across it. So we accelerate everything from UDP, TCP, everything else. So we are network focused and not really application focused. Having our niche in data center to data center meant that we are the leaders in scalability. That's where the big links are between large data centers. So today we can offer much greater scalability than all of our competitors in the market, and that's a key thing as well. And our architecture, we're architected differently from our competitors. We are software focused, and that's sort of key as we go through the presentation. Again, scalability is achieved in a lot of our competitors' boxes by adding compression cards and encryption cards, which are two of the most resource hungry elements in a WAN optimization device. We decided to do this in software several years ago. So as you throw more CPU and RAM and disk at our devices or our software, it will scale linearly, and that's great. So the emerging cloud and what it means for an enterprise. There's a lot of drivers within an enterprise driving people towards using the cloud. I think it's been mentioned already that there's an explosive growth in data, and having to maintain your own DC is a huge commitment for these enterprises. They're becoming so expensive, they can't really control the amount at which the data is growing. And they need to be able to scale easily and use it elastically as well. So as demand grows for certain things, it may be cyclical. So they may have a couple of very busy months. Think of retail coming up to the holiday season, and then it will die off again. So they want to be able to consume a large amount of resource and then give it back, instead of having to pick the high water mark and make sure that you're maintaining that across the whole year. There's a demand for off-site backup. When you think of disaster recovery, when you think of large outages, natural disasters, etc., they need to make sure that things are off-site. And again, they don't want to be building another large data center that they have to maintain and look after and heat or fit in the AC and provide power to. And we're also seeing that in enterprises, the IT staff are becoming more generalists. These guys need to do lots of things. So looking after a data center is not, shouldn't be one of their jobs. It's something that's, very laborious, and it takes a lot of time, and they should be busy doing other stuff. So these are the real drivers. And, the requirements from a cloud solution, like Silver Peak is offering, it needs to be software, obviously, and virtualized. Having a software solution makes it very easy for us to virtualize. So we sort of tick that box. It needs to be scalable, and you need to be able to start off at the low end and provision and add in more capacity as the demands need or grow from the customer. And obviously, in terms of pricing, it needs to be transparent and it needs to be usage-based. So it all comes back to the elasticity. As people require it, as they need it, you need to be able to give it to them very easily at a predictable cost, and as their demand drops, again that comes down. So it's usage-based and it's fair. And it needs to fit into these extensions of the corporate network. So as it's a cloud, maybe they're leveraging the virtual private cloud. Again, it needs to fit into that as well. And cheap shot at the end is that Silver Peak has all of these capabilities and can do this. Okay, thank you.
Would we started with the dinner already, right? How much time we got? Yeah, my watch runs on engineering scale. If you have gone to dentist before, doctor tells you if it hurts, raise your left hand. Could ask you help. Last 5 minutes, please raise your left hand.
Always our left hand.
Okay. Or you can also raise if it hurts. So Gluster is basically a software stack. It's a very simple idea. If you want a scalable storage, like you've heard already multiple times, right? I want to build a petabyte class storage. And today you cannot buy lots of NetApps. NetApp has the 16 terabyte volume limit. If you throw a lot of them, it just becomes very expensive and your management becomes very complicated, right? And on top of that, if you see on the other hand, business models like Pandora, Brightco, all these guys, the Facebooks and Google, they just cannot exist if they have to buy lots of NetApp. They figured out, some of these guys, like Google and Facebook, they figured out how to manage the storage on their own. All they did was they threw a lot of boxes, commodity boxes, which has drives in them, and they wrote a software layer to bring all that together, and they built a scalable storage. When we started, we basically heard from all of our customers the same story. They wanted something like that, and we ended up building a storage that made Google storage for everyone. And today, people call it cloud storage. When we started in 2006, at that time there was no cloud, but all of our customers today, they claim their storage is cloud storage. The technology we built was designed in a way for scalability. It was designed for a cloud-like environment. We are fortunate the market turned towards our kind of technology, and we are having a good lead today. When we started in 2006, kind of 2005, we had supercomputing background. We actually built second fastest supercomputer in 2004. We basically built a company after acquiring VLNX. Then VLNX history repeated in 2005. Then we were once again out, and the engineering team moved out, and Anil Gurwani convinced us to go start a company on your own, and we couldn't find an open source job for all of ourselves. We were passionate about writing open source code. Then we built a company around ourselves. In terms of investors, right, we always consider our best investors are our customers. When we started in just first 5 months of the company, the State-owned oil corporation of Venezuela, they came and gave us $500,000 just for the software, just for prototype. Great. Okay, we initially thought we were actually going to build a scalable NUMA class operating system that can basically pull a lot of machines together. That would have been a disaster. Because if you see the industry today, it's exactly like VMware, right? It's doing the reverse. They're taking a machine like a workstation like machine, they're partitioning it so you can make multiple machines out of it. We were actually trying to do the reverse, right? It would have been a very, very bad decision. The customer, like the first few months, we basically migrated them from IBM Regatta to an Intel class supercomputer. It was very easy for us, we did that. But they had a real problem. They had like 1.5 petabytes of seismic data sitting on tapes. They want to ditch all the tapes, move all that to the disk-based system. And I looked around, there was just no other technology that can hold the data reliably and scale to that class. And we thought, okay, we will do something from scratch. Everyone told us, you guys are naive, you guys are crazy, you have no clue. And we thought actually it was great because we didn't come from the storage industry. We had no fear, and they called it naivety. We said it's great. Okay, we will try and solve the problem. We really don't have any other choice. So we actually because of the pressure, right? Customer paid us, and we have hardware in place, and we have to deliver in 6 months. So this pressure actually allowed us to innovate. We took a completely different approach, fundamentally a very different architecture, and this allowed us to actually write a file system from scratch, 0 lines of code, into production in 6 months, and that actually happened. And then we realized, okay, we are all passionate about open source. Let's release the software under a GPL license, and in 2006 this happened. And 2006 and 2007 we were seeing like Goldman Sachs sitting on our mailing list. In 2007, Pandora came and became a customer of ours. Partners Healthcare from East Coast for MIT hospitals. They told us, you guys are great, we want to build a healthcare cloud storage, and they put us in production. They wanted Solaris support, we didn't have Solaris. They told us, you're in user space, you can port in short time. We actually did that in a week, and they put it in production environment. These kind of things never happened in the storage industry before. But end of 2007, we realized we are a storage company. That's the last thing I wanted to do actually. I never wanted to build a company. I just wanted to do research, write code, be happy. But that happened, right? Fate. It's just fate. And it just so happened it became a storage startup. And storage startup are kind of cursed. Many storage startups just died prematurely. And VCs call that this is graveyard of storage startup. And today we see we survived the curse. And we are here to stay. And when we started, I was able to pull these free software open source hackers who were contributing code to my other projects, and they were doing this in their free time. They felt it was great. They get paid to do such software. Then we pull them all together, and like you can see, the lead developer sleeping inside our data center. That was actually a quieter place in the office. If you move out, there will be a lot of discussions, right? The US office, the very first office where we started, it was in Starbucks. Business plan was written on a paper napkin. Then, luckily, the other founder, his bedroom was available. And it was better than a garage, right? So we started there, and that was also our data center. That was everything. We get homemade tea, snacks, and we miss that today. But in the US, we kept our operations lean. Even the website was what I could type as HTML in Emacs on a dark screen. It was static. But still, customers came to us. They didn't care if we even really had an office in the US. Bangalore, we started growing, and then we built a team in Bangalore. One guy we got from Hungary, and then the company started growing. Today, we have a great office. And we are funded by Nexus and Index Venture Partners. It was actually in 2008, Conwell convinced us, you guys are great for taking the company forward, go raise VC funding. And Nexus and Index. Actually, the most important part, what Narayan told us was, great ideas are always controversial in the beginning. So we believe you, and he trusted us. It was about people, right? So we took the company forward. Today we see like a lot of customers. They're like if you are using Pandora, all of the songs of Pandora is coming from Gluster. Like Netflix and Google, video content are served by these content delivery networks. Some of these top content delivery networks are all powered by Gluster, bots.net, and a lot of names. You probably are using Gluster indirectly without knowing. The idea is very simple, right? They could not buy NetApp. NetApp just doesn't scale, and NetApp was built for an enterprise database. 1 terabyte of database is a lot. But when it comes to files and folders, they just grow insanely, right? You wanted a scalable storage that is like 10 times faster, 10 times larger, but it's at 1/10 the cost, so 1,000 times bigger, right, or better. And the best way to solve this is just put lots of boxes together, write a software, and the software lets you do the job. And the storage guys thought it was impossible. Storage has to be hardware-based business. It was all very complicated. They said you need to have Brocade certification, Cisco certification, EMC certification. We told you don't need all that. All you need is how to install a basic operating system, like Linksys router. If you know how to set up that, it shouldn't be any hard to set up 100 terabyte storage, right? And the key to scalability, we realized it was simplicity. The very fundamental reason is simplicity. If you keep everything simple, you just keep scaling. And customers believe that, and most of these customers, they actually were using Gluster already. They downloaded from our open source site, and they put it into production. By the time the data became more critical, they called us and they purchased subscription. And now the business is beginning to grow. There are a lot more customers. Community-wise, there are like thousands of deployments all over the world. We are getting code contributions, in terms of the development environment, QA environment, what we have is unmatchable. But the investment we made is like really nothing, right? It is like community trying us on all kinds of hardware we never imagined before, all kinds of operating environment, application environment. We really turned things around, and open source helped us in a big way. I don't want to bore you with the details. There are a lot of features, but really, buying storage is an emotional decision, right? It's not about you got these features that are it's like one third of NetApp's cost. It's not about that. It's about a marriage, right? You are going to stick to Gluster for a few years, and the real reason is that we enable business models that were not possible before. Look at others, look at all the success stories. If you have similar needs, pretty much there are only a few choices, right? Here is open source storage, and there's a huge, vibrant community and fast growing. Most of the time we didn't sell, customers realized the value themselves and they purchased. Your use case is similar to that. Keys to success, I think it's just one reason really, it's just people. And what made us possible was we took a problem that was thought impossible, but we didn't want to solve that problem. It was a problem customer told us to solve, we solved it. And it was like an impossible problem to solve, right? Even PNC, NetApp tried to solve this problem. Number of storage startups tried to solve this problem, and that actually powered us. And we were like, it's a really hard problem to solve. Writing file systems is cool, and it's open source, so we were able to get passionate team of people, and that's what really made us succeed. Key technology differentiators, really tell people it's not the features, it's just a common sense, really. It just become uncommon in the storage industry, right? Because they tell you, no, you have to have this proven, trusted brand, and then end of the day, you really cannot build a business around it. Today, data is a core part of your business, right? And they are really holding back the cloud from flourishing. And data centers today, right, even VMware, you end up spending 8 times more on your storage. And it doesn't make sense that you are not able to scale anymore on the computing side because you are spending on storage. And not just that, your storage is not scaling, it's holding you back. And what we thought was, we came up with, of course, fundamentally different ideas. We actually inverted the operating system stack. We said it's the file system that's going to be the operating system. File system is not part of the operating system. File system is going to be the operating system container. Operating system features are parts of the file system. We used a microkernel model. We pushed the storage operating system stack to user space. We got rid of the metadata model. We came up with elastic hashing algorithm. All that is really secondary, right? Really what you care is, it's common sense. Customers knew that, and storage industry experts did not. And customers asked, I just want a bunch of machines and I want software, and I get the same drive from Dell or Supermicro or Fry's. Why am I paying you $250,000 just to get the chassis? It just doesn't make sense. And it was just listening to customers. And just the last slide, and then I won't bore you anymore. What do I think? What do I think in terms of the future of cloud? What is really cloud doing? Right? Apart from all the buzz, like even temporary matters, there is a cloud matters now, right? what really matters is, right? Even our own marketing team told early on, oh, this is all hype. You don't want to be associated with the hype. But I was able to see, because I'm an engineer, I was able to see the real value. And the real value was cloud was consumerizing IT, and industry was moving towards a no IT model. And even if it's not like IT guys are going to lose job, they already don't have time, right? They are doing the front desk job to sysadmin, to repairing your computer keyboard, everything. They just don't have time. Everyone wants a Amazon-like data center where everything is automated. Today, if you sales team, you no longer go to your IT department, your sales guys hire a Salesforce expert and you sign up an account. It's just as simple as that, right? Your marketing, Mercado or Google Analytics, there's no IT in between. It's user serviceable, self-serviceable, automated. So I put your credit card information, as simple as that. And cloud is enabling that. As software is moving into a software as a service model, the new computing infrastructure is going to look like this. Amazon-like infrastructure on the data center side, and Android and iOS like tablet and mobile computing environment, which means like our reliance on Microsoft Windows is slowly going away. It's getting better. It has become easier to develop applications. With bulk of your data, your applications hosted on the cloud, and your tablet or mobile computing device is just the front end, and that's the future model. And cloud is really enabling to build that ecosystem, right? So what does all this mean? If you see today, Google, Facebook, or Twitter, any of these guys, right? The value is not about the Gmail front end or Google Maps. It's about their scalable infrastructure. And what cloud is doing is making that available to all. It's commoditizing that part. And what this can mean is 5 to 10 years, Google's today's strength can become their baggage. And today, a bunch of developers sitting in their garage can develop an app and go head-on challenge with Google, and their operational cost will be so low, very less investment, values in the application, right? Come up with an application that can spread virally, and you are positioned to go take on Google, go take on Facebook. And you can do one thing so much better than Google, right? You cannot do everything, but you can do one thing. And cloud will enable you with a very small investment, probably even just from your own pocket, you can develop a killer app. And this will cause a revolution in the application space, and it's unstoppable. Thank you.
Wow, that was quite a set of presentations here. And as you saw, quite a diverse set of presentations across multiple different spaces. But this is the new cloud landscape. And I certainly want to spend most of the rest of the time with the audience asking, allowing you to ask your questions. But I kind of want to ask one question before to sort of kick it off. Each of you have are hopefully very, very successful. Your business grows tremendously. What do you see as your sort of technology challenge that might provide actually others here in the audience some opportunities to innovate for you?
I'd say that the number one challenge is storage cost.
Thank you.
I mentioned briefly that at least SugarSync's deployment is not at, I guess one of the other people mentioned.
Accordance focusing on the application space means that, as you see some of these big providers like even Amazon and Google are kind of going up the stack slowly and steadily. So initially you start from basic storage, then Amazon now has RDS, which is more like a relational database. Then these guys are also coming up with high-performant databases. So it's almost like, and then Google Analytics, and then obviously they're actually coming up the stack in terms of the value. So it's almost always like we are looking behind our backs in terms of saying we need to be much ahead of the curve, such that very quickly suddenly it's not like we turn and we are completely kind of commoditized or something.
I think from an enterprise perspective, for Silver Peak, as we move into hybrid environments where the part of the corporate environment is actually on site in data centers, in branches, and another part of it is in a cloud, I think that the management and the visibility across a full hybrid environment is critical.
Really, all problems start and end with people. In terms of challenges, right, it's about like if you make things simple and if you have the right set of people, I really don't see any technology problem that you cannot solve, right?
Right. Alvin, did you have any particular questions before we open it up for the audience? Alvin, what happened? All right, he's gone.
Yes, I was just wondering, like most of the discussion has been on the software side, which is good. But I was wondering from your own perspective, if you want to see something done at the hardware level, what would you think should be done? Because software can only push you so forward. If you see the trend is, software goes into the appliance, goes onto a system on a chip. Like if you see certain companies which are going in that direction. So I was thinking, what would you like to see at the hardware level that will make you more euphoric about the space?
I think one of the largest hurdles aside from storage costs that we run into is just finding hardware that can help increase our density. So we recently, for example, one of our key pieces of infrastructure, we doubled the density, the number of users that we can store per unit per square foot, per kilowatt. And so innovations around higher I/O rates in smaller and smaller footprints is where I'd like to see innovation.
I would echo that.
Yeah, I have a general question. I come from a systems background and I have seen, client-server paradigm and of course workstations and PCs. And now I see this cloud paradigm. And to me, from a systems point of view, I see it's an obvious slam dunk. So my question is, from a strategic point of view, what do you see as resource issues? Either because storage is not an issue. There are a lot of storage available. CPU is not an issue because a lot of things are available. Memory is not an issue. So what are the issues more like in a soft area, whether it is safe, whether it is security or IDE, or what are the issues holding the cloud to be completely ubiquitous?
I'll make the cost comment again, actually. I mean, as we're experiencing this at SugarSync, as we grow, we're quickly getting to the point where hosted services such as Amazon S3, I mentioned we're not on EC2 in a significant way, but it gets to the point where we can do it cheaper ourselves. And so that's something that I think is going to be an issue, just the storage costs, the retrieval costs, the network costs, get to a point where it helps you in a really big way when you're starting, and you might have the need for kind of elastic growth and shrinking and so on. But if your growth curve is kind of up and to the right, and you can predict that reasonably well, I think the cost of cloud-based solutions is an issue.
I have a quick comment. It's a great question. I think that because there's so many different endpoints right now, and the operating systems are changing, as we talked about it, and the increasing mobility, that it's really on the application vendors to make their products more consumable by these end devices. So I think we're going to see a lot of the applications tending, and we can see it already, trending towards HTTP and HTTPS-based access. So, I mean, the old CIFS and MAPI protocols that we see in enterprises today will probably be replaced by just, a simple web access to allow you to leverage the full functionality, but over a very common protocol. Pretty technical answer to your question.
I can just add one point there. In terms of software moving into the cloud today, pretty much you cannot take your traditional enterprise app into the cloud. You have to rewrite. There is a lot of baggage now. It's the time to clean up. It is really almost impossible to take an app just like that into the cloud, right? And unfortunately, the cloud itself is evolving very fast, and the APIs are not standardized yet. Today, pretty much in terms of standard, Amazon APIs are considered like a standard, and in terms of development, probably I won't worry about it too much. Everyone is innovating. It will settle at some point of time. But anyway, software lifecycle also has changed dramatically, right? Develop your app just based on the app APIs available today. Get to the market quickly. Focus on that, and even if it means rewriting later, not worry about it so much. There are other cloud providers, pretty much their API, they are sticking to Amazon API, they are standardizing one way or another. The difficulty is rewriting your apps, and there is no LAMP-like stack equivalent in the cloud today. The standards are yet to be defined. Don't worry about it, the benefits are great. Just go and write your app, get to the market soon.
But in 10 years' time, you see people just having a keyboard, a screen, and a router, and that's it. You don't need huge storage, you don't need big CPU, you don't need, because you can do all that
Yeah.
from your screen. efficiently being done in somewhere in the cloud, right?
Like, I would hope, right? But I think in 10 years, I really cannot tell what's going to happen.
And no keyboard, it's all touch.
This is just for the whole panel. If you could maybe pick one particularly tough question that your customers have asked about security and how you would have answered it.
Especially to Brock and others, Jay, for security.
Well, one question that comes up is, what access do employees of a company have to personal data? That really comes up. So our approach to that has been just to be crystal clear about who does, who doesn't, and the audit trail around that, so that everybody can be aware of what accesses are happening at what time. So I say just transparency is the right way to address that.
Is that really satisfying your new customers, the enterprises that are asking you about your product?
Well, there are a lot of, I would say that that's not the primary concern that we're running into.
So what is?
I think it's more around product requirements and how does a solution like this fit into other, existing product solutions. It's a little more at the, how do you, things like how do you take personal data and work, enterprise data and have some kind of clean separation. It has yet, security hasn't been the main concern, more at a feature and functionality.
All the surveys seem to suggest security as the #1 concern for cloud. Jay, what's your experience?
The type of customers who we are working with, so one question they do ask is, we gather data at the granular level in terms of all the interactions within the app itself. So one thing they always ask is, within your product itself, is there an obfuscation of IDs, such that what you provide as analytics is at a kind of a higher level versus at the lower level of detail? Because as we bring in the information, we also bring in some demographic information regarding their IDs from Facebook. So that's one question that kind of constantly gets posed, to make sure that we are not basically trying to use that data for any third-party purposes. Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah, my question to that is, layer of security, what about hacking? I understand the employees now have access to the government controls, but what about third-party companies, hackers come in, hacking SugarSync?
Well, I think that's of course always a concern. I'd say we do the same thing anybody does, which is try to constantly be looking at what our security measures are they adequate, make sure we get other opinions on whether our opinions are correct, and just do everything possible to try to avoid that like that.
Do you get a lot of questions like that, or you don't get much at all from customers?
I'd say most of the questions we do get are more about access to personal data as opposed to hacking.
Sorry. So I'm very surprised that security wasn't the first concern, because the moment you put up your slides, Brock, I was like, oh my gosh, security. And I'm not a 25-year-old, so I'm not that worried about privacy as a 25-year-old. But I think later in my life, where I am today, I'm very worried about privacy, syncing all my data, sitting somewhere out there. And then also single point of failure. I don't know how you have addressed that issue. We all know of the Amazon cloud failures in the last few months. I don't want my data to be inaccessible, especially if I'm sharing enterprise and private life together. I want it all the time, anywhere, seamlessly, totally secure. Nobody else seeing it, nobody else collecting stuff without knowing me, right?
So there are a couple of questions there. I'll try to address them. So I wouldn't say that security is not a concern. I was answering the question in the context of what do potential enterprise customers seem most concerned about? So, and at this point, it's how does this solution fit within my infrastructure? In terms of your own data and privacy around that, you always do, anybody who uses the SugarSync service or any other consumer-facing service has the option of encrypting that data before uploading. In that case, nobody has access to that data. They have access to the bits, but they can't make any sense of it. Only you can do that. So I'd say if that's a concern, customers who are very concerned about that or have data that's particularly sensitive, I would encourage them to take that kind of approach.
I see two interesting intersections in this overall cloud paradigm. On the one hand, you're moving data out of the data centers into the cloud. And part of it is because you're now dealing with very, very large volumes of data, especially for social marketing and the entire concept of new ways of doing business with the social media. On the second hand, you are looking at utilizing the data and analyzing the data, and preferably analyzing it at source, so that when you present it to the user, you don't have to transmit lots of data. Google addressed it through MapReduce, Hadoop, and various technologies of massively parallel systems. The question is, do you see in the future acceleration of the algorithms for analytics? And what kind of acceleration do you see hardware, software? And secondly, do you see any kind of acceleration in the I/O media for transferring this data to the user?
So it's more analytics. I think Jay, you want to take that?
Yeah. So one thing we've seen is all the things that have been done around Hadoop. So it requires some time for that massive amount of data to be processed. So in terms of what we call latency, what we've seen is for more real-time oriented kind of applications where people want to actually get information much faster, throwing petabytes of data at Hadoop and expecting it to come back within a few minutes is kind of something that's not working at this point, or that Hadoop cannot scale to. So one thing that we've seen a lot of the hardware vendors, and especially this has happened in the last, I would say, a couple of years, 2-3 years, and that's where these recent series of acquisitions, Asta got acquired by Teradata, then you had Netezza getting acquired by IBM, you had Vertica getting acquired by HP, is they're basically doing some innovation at the hardware plus the software level, where the data is actually kind of being processed or data is being accessed, where rather than traditional storage, it's basically key value pair kind of storage or columnar storage, such that it can address the needs of analytic systems like ours, where we want the turnaround in terms of how quickly people can look at the data to be much more low latency. So a user comes in, he wants to know more about how a particular segment is behaving or what has happened in the last week. They're not going to be waiting for Hadoop to actually come back and say, okay, it's going to take you a couple of hours. So we see there is going to be both a combination of hardware level innovation as well as software level innovation. That's the way we are looking at it.
The way we are solving this problem is to parallelize the problem as much as possible. If we expect hardware to be solved, we cannot wait for many years, right? So instead, just buy lots of commodity boxes and throw a lot of machines. And your problem is to parallelize. And also, it's very, very expensive to move data across the wire. So instead, you move the code to the data, and that's the whole idea of Hadoop, right? And because we are in the storage space, we are holding the data. We are now beginning to see the same concerns that Hadoop's scalability, the HDFS part, Hadoop distributed file system part is actually the storage engine for Hadoop, and that's not scaling. It uses a very limited in-memory centralized metadata server, and it also imposes restrictions like your object size has to be like 64 megabyte chunks minimum. Because we are holding the data well and we can scale to multiple petabytes, we are introducing HDFS API compatibility in the next few months, and then we will be able to run Hadoop stack on top of Gluster. And the idea is basically just throw lots of boxes. That's how Google and everybody else is doing. Just throw lots of commodity boxes and you parallelize your problem. Don't move the data. Move the code to the data.
So that's a good point you're making, right? Basically, it's more of an observation. If you looked at the paradigm from moving from dial-up down to pushing WAN acceleration down to the edge, right? I see clearly bandwidth has been one of the greatest resources that have enabled a lot of these business models, right? Now, the second point I was trying to make is, from your own personal experiences and from your presentations, it seems to me that all the data you're talking about is data that's been created inside the cloud, right? As you mentioned, push the code to the cloud, right? There are many business models that need the massive processing capability that cloud could provide, but have a lot of I/O, physical I/O transactions. As an example, in the EDA industry, right? I mean, there's no way you're going to move gigabytes of simulation and stuff across the wire. So there are some challenges around that. I was wondering if you have faced such questions from your potential customers or customers. What are your thoughts about that? That's one. And second question is, in a typical deployment that you have seen, what kind of I/O requirements are you seeing in terms of data, gigabits per second or megabits per second, as well as compute, MIPS or DMIPS, whatever you want to call them, right? If you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'll first address the performance part. Like if you basically got together 10 commodity watches, right? If you even with a 1 gigabit network, you are talking about 20 gigabit ports. You are talking about 1.5 gigabytes per second throughput on a commodity hardware, and 10 gigabit is becoming very common. It's pretty cheap. You are talking about 20 10 gigabit ports, and Gluster also has InfiniBand RDMA support. You are talking about 1 or 2 microsecond latency, like several gigabytes. Like on a even node of 8 node storage cluster, we were able to deliver 16 gigabytes per second throughput. So commodity hardware is there. We feel that. But in terms of like now specifically EDA space, I won't tell who this EDA guy is. There are only a handful of them, right? But the problem they're having moving into the cloud, they all want to move into the cloud, but their app is like they're literally compiling source code on a NAS volume, and no storage vendor has handled that kind of I/O effectively. It's a real challenge. And looking into their code base, right, there's a lot of scope for optimization. When you compile source code, you're repeatedly like reading as it is small files. You read few files and then you go inside, include another file you open. Just causes a huge amount of chatty, useless I/O operations on the wire. And you also need a scalable POSIX interface. Gluster supports POSIX interface, but the problem is POSIX is designed 20 years before, right? I think like my best advice is there's a lot of scope for optimization. It's very little development. You can actually optimize your application to do sensible I/O on the storage volume. You can like simple idea, right? When you do this processing, basically you process on the local hard drive, but the processed result is copied onto the NAS shared volume. It will have several folds improvement in your performance. But in terms of your development investment, it's one time, and it makes complete sense to do this investment than paying lots of dollars to the storage vendors.
So we have under 5 minutes of questions. So let's see if we can do as many as possible, and both the short questions and short answers. How about that? Okay, so.
Real short. Cloud computing is device agnostic and browser agnostic. So how do you guys plan for scalability and performance? I know you answered partially the question, but there are going to be instances where throwing more hardware is not going to solve the problem. I would like to address a question to SugarSync, CTO. How do we address... Thank you. How do we address scaling beyond... Scalability and performance. Like if you need to go. It's a design, and it's an architecture issue. It's a data partitioning and architecture design challenge.
Okay, next. There's one more there. Yeah.
Hi, for all panelists. If you look at the enterprise, it's clear with Silver Peak and with Gluster how you would be able to get, obviously, enterprise people excited. But virtually every one of you would like to be adopted and used by enterprises. So on a scale like 1 to 10, where do you see enterprise adoption right now of some of your type of cloud technologies?
Yeah, great question.
Okay. Yeah, first, the confusion we have internally is the definition of enterprise has changed quite a bit, right? Who is enterprise? Like, even from Google to Twitter to some of these web startups, they are also claiming we have the same enterprise requirements, so the definition has pretty much changed, and everyone is asking for the same functionality. In terms of enterprise adoption, where we are, that's where the money is, right? But it's also very hard to penetrate. It is a challenge. But the only way we can get there is to actually identify the market focus, that one market you can do really well and the value is conveyed effectively. Because even inside the enterprise, right? If, say, for example, we try to challenge NetApp and EMC saying that we will store the Oracle database, go throw your NetApp box away, we will just fail. But even inside enterprise, like say Bank of America, we're storing check images, and that over a period of time it grows a lot, and NetApp is just not suited for that environment, right? Identifying that inside the enterprise and targeting that, that's how we get in there and repeating that same success story.
So scale 1 to 10, where are you in this 1 to 10? That's what you asked.
Like the difficulty in answering that is I don't know whom to claim enterprise, right? So like I'm really not in a position to answer that. I'll probably be conservative and say like 3 or 4.
Yeah. Joe?
I would say in terms of adoption today, enterprises that are starting to move their applications, their business critical solutions into the cloud, it's literally 1 or 2. In terms of